I previously made a video comparing the original NuPhy Air75 to the Lofree Flow, and that one pretty much came down to personal preference in terms of which one I would recommend. But now we've got the NuPhy Air75 V2, which has added new features and improved existing features. So we're going to revisit the comparison with the Lofree Flow, and this time I've got both the linear option with the lighter colorway and the tactile option with the darker colorway. So let's get into it. Before we dive in, I want to mention that both NuPhy and Lofree actually sent me one of these keyboards, which I did make separate review videos about, and the other two I purchased myself. I had actually ordered both of them on pre-order when they were first announced, so I have one of each model, so to speak, for both of them. This video is not sponsored, I was not paid to make it, but I do have a couple of affiliate links in the description for you if you want to support this channel and you were planning on picking up either of these keyboards. Well, it's time. I've finally got my hands on both versions of the Lofree Flow, and I also have two versions of the newest Air75 V2. So let's get into this head-to-head comparison. These are both great 75% low-profile keyboards, but they are quite different. So the first thing we're going to do is an objective comparison of their features. Spoiler, the Air75 V2 just kind of does more than the Lofree Flow. But second, we'll get into more subjective territory, and we'll talk about typing, feel, and sound. But first, here's a sound sample of both keyboards with comparable switch options, both tactile and linear. Okay, let's get into the feature comparison where we can be a little bit more objective here. The Air75 V2 dimensions are just slightly different than the Lofree Flow, but they are very similar in terms of how much space they'll take up on your desk. No major differences there. The build materials, though, are different. The Flow offers a full aluminum construction, while the Air75 V2 has an aluminum top frame and an ABS plastic bottom. Both of them do have dampening material inside to reduce unwanted sounds, but the Lofree Flow has a gasket mount design for the PCB, which means there's a small amount of flex when you type, giving a softer feel that you usually only find in high-profile keyboards. I have to give the edge here to the Lofree Flow in terms of just the way that it's constructed, because how did they do this? It doesn't make sense, but I love it. When it comes to typing angles, however, the Air75 V2 is the clear winner. It has fold-out feet with 2 extra positions, so it's got a total of 3 typing angles, where the Lofree Flow only has 1. You can't adjust the typing angle at all on the Lofree Flow. Battery life is an important consideration if you plan to use these keyboards without the wired connection. The Air75 V2 has a huge 4,000 milliamp hour battery that can last up to 220 hours with the backlighting off. I personally was able to get a little over 3 weeks of use with the lights off before I had to charge it. The Lofree Flow, on the other hand, has a 2,000 milliamp hour battery and a stated use time of up to 40 hours with the lighting off. Now, I haven't been particularly disappointed with the battery life of the Lofree Flow, but the Air75 V2 is the winner here. Wireless connectivity options have been improved on the Air75 V2 compared to the original. You still have the same choices as before. You've got Bluetooth for 3 devices, you've got 2.4 gigahertz wireless, and you've got USB-C wired. But the polling rates of the 2.4 gigahertz connection is now 1000 hertz, which is enough for gaming use, and the Bluetooth connection has improved to 125 hertz from 90 hertz. The Lofree Flow, on the other hand, has Bluetooth for 3 devices, but no 2.4 gigahertz. It does have USB-C wired, of course, but it doesn't state the polling rate for the Bluetooth connection on their site, so I'm not quite sure what to expect there. So the Air75 V2 also takes home the badge for the best wireless connectivity options, especially with the improvement that they made in the V2. Now, when it comes to lighting, again, the Air75 V2 is going to be the winner here. This is one area where I felt the Lofree Flow, it kind of fell pretty flat for me. The backlighting just isn't particularly well executed on the Flow, in my opinion, and I also don't love how the keycaps are semi-transparent with the lighting on. Even with the black keycaps, you can see the backlighting through the keycaps, which I find distracting. So I swapped most of the keycaps on the light color version here for just some white low profile keycaps I got on Amazon because I wanted to show the difference between the stock keycaps, which are still up here in the F row, and just any more solid, more dense PBT keycaps, because you can really see the difference, I think, with the two different ones on there and the backlighting on how the stock ones are pretty translucent or semi-transparent. And the side LEDs are barely visible on pretty much any surface. So the Air75 V2, by contrast, has a ton of different RGB modes. The side LEDs are function indicator lights like connection status, caps lock, and those things. While it doesn't come with shine-through keycaps, NuPhy does offer some shine-through keycaps that you can buy separately. So the winner in terms of backlighting, again, is the Air75 V2. Now, switch choices, that's a matter of personal preference as far as which one you like the best, but objectively, the Air75 V2 has more switch options, and NuPhy actually lets you pick the exact combination of keyboard color and switch choice that you want. This really shouldn't be a thing because that's how it should be, in my opinion. However, the Lofree Flow makes you choose between those two things at the same time. The lighter color option here comes with the linear switches, and the darker color option comes with the black keycaps and tactile switches. So you're stuck with whatever switches come in that color option unless you buy a separate set of switches to swap them out yourself. And I think that's ridiculous, especially because the Lofree Flow costs over $150. But don't worry, we'll talk about how great the switches are in the Lofree Flow when we get to the more subjective topics in just a moment. But lastly, in terms of feature set, we come to customization. It's non-existent for the Lofree Flow. It's not QMK firmware. There's no proprietary Lofree software to customize it. So if you need to do any customization of key functions or anything like that, you're talking third-party software. Meanwhile, the Air75 V2 is QMK compatible with VIA functionality. So you've got full control over key mapping, macros, and layers. So this is no contest here. If you need to customize and you want that QMK level of control, the Air75 V2 is the easy winner. So ultimately, the Air75 V2, it just has more features and some better specifications than the Lofree Flow, plain and simple. The original Air75 also had a more robust feature set compared to the Flow, but now it's really not even a fair comparison. The V2 is just in another league. But since using a keyboard is a tactile experience where sound and feel play a very important role, we can't count the Flow out just yet. Okay, it's time to tackle the more subjective aspects of these keyboards. The typing sound and feel of the Air75 V2 is a bit more refined than the original. NuPhy adjusted the dampening materials in the case, and they added a switch pad, so the sound is a little bit more contained, I guess you could say. Of course, the actual volume and type of sound you get is going to vary based on the switches that you select, but the new Cowberry linear switch provides the thockiest sound as well as a slightly softer typing feel. The Cowberry switches are definitely my favorite, and the overall typing experience is one of the nicest that I've had on a low-profile keyboard. The new Moss switch also offers a great tactile feel. It's much more tactile feeling with a sharper tactile bump compared to brown switches. Now, even though the overall typing feel is a bit softer than the original Air75, it's still not flexible or bouncy like what you can get from a high-profile keyboard with a flexible PCB mounting. It is, after all, still a low-profile keyboard. But then there's the Lofree Flow, which takes the low-profile typing experience to a whole new level. They somehow managed to fit a gasket mount design in this very thin case. Now, don't expect to get the same amount of flex that you would get in a high-profile keyboard with a gasket mount design, but there is a little bit of flex here, and having that flex means a slightly softer typing feel that can be less fatiguing for longer typing periods. And then, of course, there's the full palm switches made by Kailh. Although I do think you should be able to get whichever switches you want in either color option. These are pretty nice switches. The linear switches are my favorite, and they offer a muted sound and a smooth, satisfying feel with a little bit more resistance than you might expect, but in a good way. There's nothing clacky about the sound profile. It's very different than any other low-profile keyboard I've used. There's also really no rattle from stabilizers or anything like that. There's just no unwanted sounds with the Flow. The tactile switches are also nice and offer a similar sound, but I personally just prefer the linears a little bit more. That's just my personal preference. We are talking about the most subjective parts here. Now, the second aspect in the general category of subjectivity here is design aesthetics. It really depends on what you're looking for here. The Lofree Flow is a little bit more of a minimal and elegant type design. The Air75 V2 is a little bit more, I don't know, dynamic. It's got your color pops here with a few of the keycaps. I do really like the new white and black color options that they've added. There was nothing wrong with the original color option, that gray color option, but it's always better to have more color options in my opinion, because now it's just more likely you can pick a color that matches your setup. But the all-metal case combined with a little bit more understated styling for the Lofree Flow is definitely something I could see people picking because, I mean, it just looks nice on your desk. Now, one quick thing I mentioned in my separate review video about the Lofree Flow that I do want to re-emphasize here is when it comes to the switches, you are going to be sort of restricted to swapping out only Kailh specific low profile switches that fit in these sockets because the pin arrangement, the position of the switch pins is different than Gateron low profile switches that you would find from NuPhy or in other low profile keyboards that use Gateron switches. So overall, which one comes out on top? Well, if you're looking for a 75% low profile mechanical keyboard, I personally think the Air75 V2 is the best choice on the market right now because of all of the things that it combines into one product, the fantastic typing experience and all of those great features. However, I do have to concede that the Lofree Flow is still a fantastic keyboard. Besides the things that I mentioned about the backlighting really not being anything fantastic and my issue with the keycaps, there's really nothing wrong with it. So it's not necessarily in second place to the Air75 V2 because it's got bad things about it. It just doesn't have as many features. It doesn't do as many things as the Air75 V2. However, I would not blame anybody for picking the Lofree Flow if the design aesthetics and the typing feel and sound are really your only priorities. If you don't have a need for customization, if you like QMK is like, what is that? I'm never going to use that. If you're not going to really have a need to use a 2.4 gigahertz wireless connection, if those things just don't matter to you, then the Lofree Flow is still a fantastic choice. So let me know what you think of these two keyboards down in the comments. Let me know which one you have and how you're liking it. Let me know if you're happy with your choice. And I hope this video was helpful for you if you were trying to make that choice. If you are planning to pick up either of these keyboards and you want to support the channel, I do have those affiliate links down in the description for you. Thanks everybody. See you next time.